starting from the very grassroots of our communities. Community wealth building can be achieved in line with addressing the climate emergency. Through struggle with our neighbours against the vampiric force of the private energy sector and against a callous political elite who uphold it, the working class can save itself from economic peril after enduring decades of austerity, while also alleviating the impending climate catastrophe that awaits us all. As the Rose Statement of Aim sets out, we've got an opportunity now while outside the EU to fight for public sector-led infrastructure programmes in the energy sector. We can force a requirement for contractors to adhere to specified employment conditions that put the worker at the centre. And also we can crucially take power over essential utilities by bringing them into public ownership through local government. But while the EU's legal framework preventing such radical action from hitherto developing has been removed, there still remains a political neoliberal context in our country that is hell-bent on sustaining a broken system of rampant inequality, most demonstrably evident in the private energy sector itself. While some of the most vulnerable among us are spending an average of 54% of their income on bills, SSE have made an operating profit of 1.5 billion in the last year, with a 15% year-on-year increase in profit, according to the BBC. SSE have been owned since 2020 by OVO Energy, the second largest energy supplier in the UK, who have been fined by Ofgem for causing detriment to over 240,000 of their customers. In my own community, the Wyndford and Maryhill, we know too well the callousness of energy companies, as we are one of the most at-risk housing schemes for fuel poverty in the country. SSE were brought in on a Scottish Government district heating network initiative in 2012, which Cube Housing Association were relying on in order to bring its housing stock in the Wyndford up to the decent home standards for energy efficiency and for fuel cost. In 2011, Alex Salmond's SNP government pledged to address fuel poverty and work towards meeting climate change targets by commissioning these heat networks across the entire country. There were also promises made of a publicly owned energy company. Today, there are over 23,000 homes in Scotland supplied by 800 heat networks, and there is no publicly owned energy company. Surprise, surprise. These vary widely in size. For example, in the Wyndford, around 1,800 homes are supplied by a district heating network. This is the biggest housing scheme with a communal heating system in Glasgow, whereas in areas like Kelvindale, the heat network only supplies around 100 homes. It's an environmentally friendly initiative, which involves a distribution system of insulated pipes that carry hot water or steam from a central source to homes within a given zone. They run at a very low cost to energy providers and to the environment. However, in our experience in the Wyndford, they have not run at a low cost to the consumer. Tenants in this area have reported to Wyndford Residents Union exorbitant rises in their fuel bills to the extent that many are now in debt or having to choose between heating or eating. 80% of these residents had already reported unaffordable heating bills before the COVID-19 pandemic. My own heating bill has risen by 56%. At a time when SSE have reported a 15% yearly increase in profit, and when their CEO, Alistair Phillips-Davies, has just handed himself a 47% pay increase. Why are they raising the fuel bills to such an extent? Greed's the answer. But our community has had enough of this blatant rip-off, and we're organising a fight back. Given that the district heating station site is owned by the Housing Association, who are a social landlord, Wyndford Residents Union have been petitioning Weekly Homes, who have subsumed Cube Housing Association, for a meeting with them and SSE in order to negotiate over these price hikes. The aims of the private energy sector to maximise profit at all costs are directly contradictory to the key founding principle of the district heating system, to alleviate fuel poverty. We believe that SSE are unfit to operate our district heating system, as they demonstrated with their offensively ignorant suggestions that they gave customers just last year to cuddle with your pets or do star jumps if you can't afford to pay your bills. Honestly. The Scottish Government and our Housing Association, on the other hand, believe that they are indeed fit to run this station, and SNC were issued a 30-year lease to rip off the community without redress back in 2012 at the network's establishment. It's undemocratic even within capitalism's own free market terms. In this system, the ideology serves that if a consumer is unhappy with a service, they can simply switch company or product in order to solve the problem. But for those of us living in these district heating schemes, we have no choice over the private energy giant who's going to rip us off. On this basis, the Wyndford Residents Union has fought for and negotiated settlements with SSE and the Housing Association in previous years. In 2019, for example, the union agreed to SSE's offer of an expanded low user tariff and a pledge not to disconnect any residents' energy due to debt during the winter months. This negotiation was achieved through protest, petition and grassroots campaigning in the local area, as well as outside SSE's HQ in the city centre. Now, however, the conditions have drastically changed, and what we're demanding is a return to the pre-April increased tariff rates. So far, we've released a petition which demands a negotiation with SSE and Wheatley Homes, and at this stage, the petition has around 200 signatures from the local community, achieved by doorstepping efforts from our local campaigners. We also held a protest outside the district heating station itself, which was attended by Labour MSP Pam Duncan-Glancy. Pam subsequently penned a letter to SSE and Wheatley Homes about the matter, but this was ignored unsurprisingly. The protest was well attended, received good media coverage, and we secured many signatures for our petition. However, we've still been stonewalled by all parties involved. A few weeks ago, we decided to protest again outside the SSE's headquarters in the city centre, and the response that we received through the media, not directly to ourselves, was that SSE will only conduct discussions on fuel tariffs with individual customers, not with us as a collective. But what SSE clearly fail to understand here is that a collective issue such as ours can only be resolved through collective bargaining. It's not the case that some of us are being subjected to increased tariffs while others are not. We're all being asked to pay over the buck for energy, which costs SSE next to nothing, energy which is collectively produced and supplied through the district heating scheme. It's actually our waste which is recirculated to produce this energy, and they've got the cheek to charge us the rates they do for it. It makes no sense, therefore, for this private interest to be even involved in what's essentially a public service. Even if we do manage to secure our negotiation, it's very clear that SSE have no interest in agreeing to a return to pre-April prices. As a social landlord, Wheatley Homes have a duty to protect their tenants from deprivation in order to secure their tenancies. They own the property that SSE is currently contracted to operate, and so they must protect the financial security of their tenants by supporting our demands. So there are two clear issues here that the Wyndford Residents Union are aiming to address. First, we must ensure that social landlords like Wheatley Homes are held accountable to us, the tenants, and not to the profiteering agenda of private energy companies like SSE. Second, we'd like to remove the role of SSE or any other private interest as a third party altogether. We see no use for them and no benefit for them. We want to utilise the power we have while outside the EU to take public ownership of utilities. We need a publicly owned energy company in order to provide energy security to the working class. This is something I believe that we can all agree on, whether or not you live within a district heating zone. But within these zones, there is a unique opportunity to appropriate the infrastructure that is now already being developed and is continuing to be developed in the coming decades in order to meet climate change targets. The Heat Networks Scotland Act of 2021 has set out government plans to accelerate the deployment of these heat networks across the country, with a target of over 650,000 additional homes being connected to heat networks between the years of 2027 and 2030. The plans require local governments to develop partnerships with the private energy sector by giving them long-term permits on the properties to develop and operate the heat networks and develop a customer base that's reliable to them. These plans are complemented by low-rate, unsecured capital loans via the District Heating Loan Fund, which has offered over 15 million to 50 different projects since its launch in 2011, alongside a newly established Heat Network Fund that was launched in February this year. These systems have been and continue to be rolled out using public money from the Scottish Government and Housing Association money from our rents. SSE and other private company involvement is directly siphoning money out of some of our poorest communities into the pockets of the rich, including the 4.5 million per year salaried CEO of SSE. And so, with an ever-expanding collective basis for energy production and distribution in a time of shared climate concerns, the moment is ripe for action and for campaigning. Wyndford Residents Union have begun reaching into other communities across Glasgow who are supplied by a district heating system in order to establish a broad base for this campaign, which must have at its core a demand for a publicly owned energy company, similar to what is being launched in Wales now by the Welsh Senedd, a supporting factor in the Welsh Labour Government's community wealth building aspirations. We've got similar aspirations here in Scotland, and our Scottish Government does have the power to take radical action like this, but they haven't got the will. Even the Green Party, supposed environmental socialists, voted down a Labour motion to establish a publicly owned energy company. The STUC, on the other hand, have committed to supporting the establishment of a publicly owned renewable energy company. This demonstrates that the concerns and work of our trade unions is inextricable from the needs of our communities. They are one and the same, whereas the interests of the neoliberal Scottish Government are quite the opposite, and indeed Boris Johnson's centralising government. Therefore, the move by the STUC at the Cost of Living Summit for closer collaboration between trade union organising and community organising is a crucial one if we are to take control of an economy that is spiralling into disaster for the working class and for our planet. If we cooperate as the working class and build the alternative from the grassroots up through campaigns such as the one that we have ongoing in Wyndford, and which is expanding across our city, then we can seize control of our future. Starting from our own communities, we can build a Britain that is no longer subservient to the greedy interests of a capitalist class who own the wealth, into one which serves the working class who produce the wealth. Thanks for listening.